Welcome. This is AllMinucOne Quick Shots. So folks, today I want to bring up the paradox of Theseus's ship. Now, this is an ancient Greek paradox similar to the idea of how many grains of sand make up a pile of sand, a heap of sand, a mound of sand. How many grains does it take? Well, we can't exactly say. But the idea of Theseus' ship, the paradox there is that if he replaces a brand new ship, he replaces a board every now and again as it needs replaced, when is it no longer the ship it originally was? Is it once everything is replaced? Is it once one part is replaced? Is it a trickle of effects over time? And I bring this up as a thought experiment, considering that we have a presidential election coming up. There are a vast amount of people who are sick and tired of the system that has been dropped upon the American people outside of the Constitution for the last 100 years. There are two parties that rule everything. And within those two parties that rule everything, they're majority friends. They're mostly friends with each other, folks. They mostly do the same agendas. They mostly work for and with the CFR and other globalist organizations. This is the way of things today. And my question to you would be, when does the Democratic Party cease to be the Democratic Party? Or when does the Republican Party cease to be the Republican Party that is based on principles of their founding? Now, there is a notion out there, which I think is wrong and old and has been very old for a long time, that the Democrats are the party of the union, people's workers' rights, the party of free speech and civil rights and all of those things. That has never, ever, ever been true. The unions perhaps, but not the civil rights issues. It never has been true. In fact, many of the Democrats who voted for the civil rights movement in the 1960s later became Republicans, but Republicans in name only. They became the neocons. I'll be doing a little video on that later, something a little bit more in depth. And similarly, the Republicans, who never really have had an identity other than the original identity that they started off with, and that was the party of abolition. And if you look at the Republican Party over the years, you will see that they've been greatly divided. And they were greatly split into neocons and more paleo-conservative and neo-libertarian or right-wing libertarian, if you would. So we have a new kind of party, though, under Donald Trump. And all of those who were neocons, who would have been liberals essentially up until the 1970s, they are against Trump. And, of course, the Democrats are way against Trump. But when did the Democrats decide that they were going to be against the people? Because Donald Trump is a populist for the people. Now, I know they smear him with all of these things, that he's a racist, he's a bigot, he's a homophobe, he's this, he's that, whatever. You watch too much propaganda media, folks, because the truth is there is no reality to any of that. It's quite obvious if you dig just a little bit. All you have to do is look into the man's history, his past, look at what he's saying in full context and not little sound bites. But the establishment Republican and Democratic Party, they like big government. They like globalism. They like foreign wars. And so, again, my question to you is the paradox of Theseus's ship. At what point do you believe that the parties are the same? Because there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people who have walked away from the Democratic Party. They have gone to the Republican side, and Republican registration is up. In fact, as far as I know, it's record-breaking. We have historic black votership amongst the Republican Party. The Latinos are picking up the Republican Party. They sort of had one foot in, one foot out over the years, at least since the Bush administration. There are gays for Donald Trump. There are all kinds of groups and all kinds of people. And you can see certain personalities over time. For instance, someone like Dave Rubin, who I highly encourage you to check out his YouTube channel and his interviews, who changed. He shifted. He was someone who had very lefty ideas and kind of started realizing, oh, wait a minute, maybe these aren't the best ideas. Now he says he's a classical liberal, like I am. But classical liberalism, my friends, is not. It's not a left-wing ideology. It may have been at the time when it was originally espoused, but classical liberalism had nothing to do with the French Revolution, for instance, and it has nothing to do with communism. In fact, the classical liberals who came up in France after the French Revolution, people like de Tocqueville and Bastiat, they were against the revolutionary movements. They were against all of the handouts. They were against, essentially, having a communistic society. And whether communism was a word that was in the common parlance of the day is another issue. The ideas have been around forever. So I just want you to think and consider this idea that the parties didn't necessarily shift or change, but from my perspective, from my opinion, from my reading of history, from my understanding of the modern era and the postmodern era, what we have really seen is the infiltration of one party, and that the other party, the Democrats specifically, have really maintained control and power. And it's really funny to read really far lefties, progressive, communist, socialist types, talk about how the Democrats won't do anything. The Democrats have done everything for the last 100 years, at least since FDR, folks, at least since then. So let's get our head around the realities that are going on and consider when the ship is no longer the ship. Now, I will remain an independent. I have no plans on being any part of any political party. I don't like being in those kind of boxes. Even labeling myself as a classical liberal to some degree puts me in a box that people automatically assume and think certain things about how I think and believe. More than anything, I like to think that I take things issue by issue, and I am, if I hold any ideology, I am ideologically controlled by the truth, seeking the truth and understanding what the truth is. And to my eyes, the truth seems to be that the Republican Party is being rebirthed. It is going through a renaissance, and the Democratic Party is doing very, very poorly. And they are returning to their roots of racism, control, big government, and all of those things. And they have lost, very much so, the unions. So I will leave it at that, folks. And this has been AllMinucOne Quick Shots. I wish you all well.